What do women really want? There's something men will never say out loud, but they think about it every single day. It's size, penis size, and not just whether they're normal, but whether they're enough. Enough to satisfy, enough to impress, enough to be wanted. You can't scroll far on social media or sit through a dinner party without hearing someone joke or comment about penis size, either bragging about how large their partner is or complaining about lackluster experience. But let's pause and ask an honest question. Do women really want a 12-inch? I'm Dr. Ross. I'm a board-certified urologist with over 20 years' experience. And today, we're cutting through the myths and noise. I'll walk you through the actual research, not opinions, on what women really prefer when it comes to penis size. And the findings might surprise you. Let's get started. A team of researchers at UCLA and the University of New Mexico conducted a study that was as creative as it was revealing. Instead of simply asking women about their ideal penis size, which can be influenced by ego, pressure, or cultural expectations, they gave them 3D printed models, 26 of them to be exact, each one with a different size, shape, and girth. No labels, no inches written on the side, just form and feel. The women were asked to choose the size they preferred in 2 different scenarios, a one-night stand and a long-term relationship. And what they found? For a one-night stand, the average preferred length was around 6.4 inches with a girth of 5 inches. But for a long-term partner, someone they could trust, connect with, and share emotional intimacy, that preference dropped to 6.3 inches in length and 4.8 inches in girth. Now pause right there. Because here's the part no one talks about. That is almost identical to the average natural erection. Let me repeat that so it sinks in. The average erect penis measures about 5.1 to 5.9 inches in length and 4.5 to 5 inches in circumference, depending on the population being measured. So, despite what social media suggests, most women, in both short-term and long-term situations, are not seeking extreme sizes. They're choosing what's close to average, what's comfortable, what feels real. And that brings us to an even more honest study, one I consider the most telling of all. Researchers analyzed best-selling sex toys across 8 major distributors and adult marketplaces, including Amazon. The idea: to see what women actually buy when no one is watching. When they're not answering surveys or impressing partners, just choosing, in private, what they really want to feel. The results were stunning in their simplicity. The most commonly purchased insertable lengths ranged from 4 to 6 inches. The most common girth was under 4.5 inches. Not massive, not extreme, not fantasy, just average, just human, just what fits their body. And here's the most fascinating part. Toys that were larger than average in size sold worse. In fact, researchers found that price and comfort mattered more than size. In other words, the idea of bigger is better didn't drive purchase behavior. Pleasure, comfort, and satisfaction did. Now, let's step away from the numbers for a moment. Because this conversation isn't just about inches or data. It's about you, the man watching this, wondering where you fit in, questioning if you measure up. And I want to ask you something no one probably ever has. When did you first learn that size was everything? Was it a scene in a movie? A cruel joke in school? A partner who made a careless comment? However it started, it planted a seed. A belief that being a good man, a good lover, even a worthy human, depended on something you couldn't change, something you were born with. But what if I told you that belief, that deep-rooted fear, has done more damage to men's self-esteem than any physical trait ever could? I've seen men sabotage relationships, avoid intimacy, even develop depression over this one silent insecurity. I've also seen men in the average range, or even slightly below it, become the best lovers their partners ever had, because they understood something the numbers never could. That satisfaction isn't about size. It's about rhythm. It's about trust. It's about communication, presence, and confidence. And those are things you can learn, things you can grow, things you control. Let me share a story. There was a patient of mine, we'll call him Marcus, early 50s, fit, divorced, smart, but stuck in a cycle of failed intimacy. Every time things got close with a new partner, he pulled away. Why? Because he believed, deep down, that he wasn't big enough to keep her satisfied. He didn't want to ask. He didn't want to be laughed at. So he disappeared before they could even begin. After weeks of counseling and real anatomical education, something shifted. He realized he was right in the average range, actually, slightly above it. But even more importantly, he learned techniques, like focusing on her pleasure zones, deep breathing to stay present, and shifting the focus from performance to connection. 3 months later, he told me something I'll never forget. She didn't care about my size. She cared that I looked her in the eyes. Think about that, because in the end, women are not measuring you in inches. They're measuring how safe they feel with you, how seen they feel, how excited, how respected, how desired. You don't need 8 inches to provide that. You need presence. You need to care. Now, yes, there are outliers. People with unique preferences. There are women who do prefer something slightly above average, just like there are men who prefer certain body types, voices, or energy levels. But those outliers are not the standard. And you do not need to become someone else's fantasy to be a great partner. You need to show up as yourself, educated, aware, and unashamed. So, if you're still wondering, do I measure up? Let me answer clearly, as a urologist, as a woman, and as someone who has heard it all behind closed doors. If you're in the average range, you are enough. If you're below average, you are still capable of giving and receiving great pleasure. Because size is not the story, connection is. And if you walk away with anything from this video, let it be this. The only thing that makes a man smaller is shame. And the only thing that makes him unforgettable is how he makes others feel. So educate yourself, own your truth, and never forget, the real power isn't in your pants. It's in your presence. If this video brought you peace, if it reminded you of your worth, I invite you to stay connected, like it. Share it with a brother or son who might be silently wondering the same question. And remember, you were never meant to be measured by inches. You were meant to be felt.